This is Bruce Friedman of Adult Site Broker, and welcome to Adult Site Broker Talk, where every week we interview one of the movers and shakers of the adult industry, and we discuss what's going on in our business. Plus, we give you a tip on buying and selling websites. This week we'll be talking to Monte Cahn of Right of the Dot. Adult Site Broker is proud to announce ASB Cash, the first affiliate program for an adult website brokerage. With ASB Cash, you'll have the chance to earn as much as 20% of our broker commission, referring sellers and buyers to us at Adult Site Broker. Check our website at asbcash.com for more details. First of all, today, let's cover some of the news going on in our industry. The U.S. Department of Justice has announced that the agency has voluntarily withdrawn a Trump-era legal challenge against the state of California's net neutrality law intended to protect the open internet. Former President Trump directed his DOJ to sue California and Governor Gavin Newsom in a federal lawsuit seeking to overturn a 2018 law that bars multi-billion-dollar internet service providers from throttling internet speed on certain websites. The California law also blocks ISP gatekeepers from blocking user access to certain websites and charging for large website access. According to the Trump administration, California acted in an unlawful and anti-consumer fashion that goes against the federal government's then deregulatory agenda regarding the internet. Jessica Rosenworcel, the Federal Communications acting chairwoman, heralded DOJ's dismissal of the lawsuit. I am pleased that the DOJ has withdrawn this lawsuit, Rosenworcel said. When the FCC, over my objection, rolled back its net neutrality policies, states like California sought to fill the void with their own laws. A DOJ legal filing petitions the federal judge in this case with the department, indicating that it hereby gives notice of its voluntary dismissal of the case. The filing was certified and submitted on behalf of the Biden Department of Justice by Brian M. Boynton, the acting Assistant Attorney General for the department's Civil Division and directors of the division's Federal Programs Branch. By taking this step, Washington is listening to the American people who overwhelmingly support an open internet and is charting a course to once again make net neutrality the law of the land, Rosenworcel said. Despite the DOJ's voluntary motion to dismiss the lawsuit, many legal fights dealing with California's net neutrality law are still set to take place. While the department dropped this specific lawsuit, it's expected to weigh in against a challenge brought by cable and phone providers. The editorial board for the LA Times said that net neutrality proponents currently sitting on the FCC should begin the process to reverse course again and seek rules to protect all U.S. internet users. A group of lawyers, including members of the legal team of the religiously motivated anti-porn crusading organization NCOSE, have filed a civil class action lawsuit in Birmingham, Alabama, against Pornhub's parent company, MindGeek, on behalf of the women who alleged illegal videos of themselves were uploaded to the platform by third-party users. According to the lawsuit, which was shared with mainstream media publications over the weekend by NCOSE, accompanied by a press release celebrating their role in the ongoing campaign to shut down the adult tube site, the two plaintiffs are only identified as Jane Doe No. 1 and Jane Doe No. 2. The lawsuit alleges that MindGeek conspired, facilitated, and financially benefited from sex trafficking ventures between themselves and others. In these ventures, Jane Doe No. 1 and Jane Doe No. 2 and other minors were trafficked and commercially exploited in a sexual nature in violation of law, including but not limited to the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. The NCOSC orchestrated lawsuit also claims that sex traffickers and MindGeek worked together to earn a profit from commercial sex acts and child pornography involving the plaintiffs and class members. The complaint makes reference to a January 2020 executive order by then-President Trump titled Combating Human Trafficking and Online Child Exploitation in the United States, and also to FOSTA SESTA, signed into law by Trump in 2018. Can I stop saying his name now? The lawyers also questioned MindGeek's moderation practices and alleged its search functions suggested search terms and tags make it easier for pedophiles to find the exact content they want, namely child sexual abuse material, including that of the plaintiffs. According to the lawsuit in 2018, when Jane Doe number 1 was just 16 years old, she was drugged and raped by a man in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The lawyers allege the man opened a Model Hub account and uploaded a video of Jane Doe number 1's victimization. The lawsuit does not go into any detail about how MindGeek was informed that the video was illegal, or the process for removing it, or whether MindGeek cooperated with law enforcement to help identify the rapist. Instead, it claims that MindGeek's inadequate moderation practices made it impossible for them to know whether any video was legal or illegal. This supports NCOSC's long-held argument that all depictions of sex should be outlawed because there is no possible way to determine that they were made by consenting adults. NCOSC, formerly known as Morality in Media, aims for the complete eradication of all pornography, which they consider obscene and prurient, as well as human trafficking and the cause of a public health crisis. The Iowa House of Representatives Commerce Subcommittee has declined to advance a bill that proposed blocking adult content on electronic devices by default, as well as creating a special $5 tax on adult entertainment to fund initiatives against human trafficking. H.F. 288 had been introduced by Representative Sandy Salmon, a Republican from Janesville. She is a religious conservative who has been the most vocal crusader against adult entertainment in the Iowa legislature. The bill is a version of the one recently reintroduced in Utah, part of a Project Blitz campaign by evangelicals to pass copycat legislation restricting adult content on a state-by-state basis. According to the local paper, The Courier, representatives of AT&T, T-Mobile, and CenturyLink pointed out that several content blocking apps are already available, and the use of those apps is at the discretion of parents, for example, rather than the internet provider. Mike St. Clair, representing the Iowa Communications Alliance of about 130 small broadband providers, told the subcommittee that HB 288 would make us the police persons for content and turn us into criminals if we don't enforce it enough. We don't monitor content and don't wish to be in that business, St. Clair added. Religiously inspired groups that spoke in support of the bill alleged that it would help address a supposed crisis of porn addiction. Although the Courier reported that another Republican representative, John Jacobson, said that just as the state regulates gambling because of the societal cost of addictive behavior, he would like the legislature to address the problems that arise from pornography, and none of the three Commerce Subcommittee members signed off on Salmon's bill. On February 25th, Monte Cahn's Right of the Dot and best-selling author and world champion auctioneer Wayne Wheat will take the gavel to auction off 75 to 100 super premium domain names. The live auction will happen beginning at noon Central Time at rotd.hibid.com. Preceded by a timed online auction with hundreds more domain names available. The live auction will be webcast in real time from a live video production studio in College Station, Texas. We'll be talking with Monte on today's podcast. Now let's feature our property of the week that's for sale at Adult Site Broker. Internet.com, the ultimate internet domain, is now available, and we're proud to list it. The domain gets 6 million unique visitors a month. This domain can be used for any of a number of uses. The opening bid is only $35 million. For more information on how to bid, contact us at adultsitebroker.com. Now time for this week's interview. My guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk is Monte Cahn of Right of the Dot. Monte, thanks for being with us today on Adult Site Broker Talk.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. Now, Monte is the founder of Right of the Dot, a licensed business and premium domain auction and brokerage firm. He was the founder of Moniker.com, and he's the former president of Snapnames.com. Now, Monte's been pioneering domain and aftermarket services since 1994. During his time, he helped many new and existing top-level domains have successful launches through registrar promotions, sales, and auctions of premium domains through marketing, brokerage, and sales. He started the first online domain brokerage business in the industry. Success has included more than $550 million in domain sales, including the industry's first domain name sale for over $1 million, the industry's first $2 million domain sale as well. Later, he sold the highest dollar domain in history with the sale of, you ready for this, folks? Porn.com. Remember that selling? Now, that was Monte for $9.5 million. Sure, the commission on that was nice. He's also the visionary behind live and online domain auctions. He was also the creator of domain appraisals, domain escrow, and Whois privacy services for the industry as well. Now, Monte was voted into the 2010 Domain Hall of Fame by industry peers. On February 25th, his company Right of the Dot will take the gavel to auction off 50 to 75 super premium domain names. You can check the auction out at rotd.com. So, Monte, what's the current state of the domain market?
Well, Bruce, it's obviously during the pandemic and the COVID situation, it definitely changed things a little bit. The beginning of the year was really rocking, and lots of things were happening. We came off a live domain auction at Cahn in January, the end of January, and had just over $1 million worth of sales at that auction. And then there was talks of COVID going on, and people starting not to travel and all that. And then, sure enough, March, the brakes hit the skids and everything came to a big slowdown. However, we had some really big sales in March and April, but then the industry kind of took a pause, at least from what I can see, just due to everybody kind of locking on and holding on to their funds, not knowing what the future was going to hold, and but COVID was spreading like crazy. Things were locking down. People were losing their jobs and becoming unemployed. In hindsight of all that, however, towards the end of the year, what we saw was a lot of mom and pops and a lot of individuals who lost their jobs or decided that they were done sitting at home doing what they were doing normally, and they started being entrepreneur, putting their entrepreneurship hats on, and starting to register and buy domain names in the aftermarket to create new business ideas and work from home. And it created a little bit of an insurgence. So I would say the domain market was affected between 30 and 50% in the downside in terms of number of transactions and cost per domain sale. But then at the end of the year, things picked up quite a bit as, people started thinking outside the box and deciding that they were going to do something that they've always wanted to do. And since they were working from home, it gave them the ability to do that. So I see a bright future, and domain names have always been a foundation of what I'd call a sustainable asset, even in hard times. I've been through a couple of the recessions,
sure,
and including 1999, 2000, then again in 2007, 2008. And then, of course, most recently, and the domain names have kept a lot of people in business by selling, and a lot of opportunity for buying for those that wanted to buy domain names at that time instead of companies going out of business in the space. They've been able to hold their own, unlike other industries.
Now, e-commerce has done better than anything during the pandemic. Why do you think domain sales would have been affected?
Well, again, the domain sales side, so e-commerce sites, that's for sure, because people didn't go out and go to physical shops to shop; they were shopping online. So,
Hmm.
of course, places like Amazon and Nike and Lululemon and the clothing stores and even some of the restaurant chains that had really good delivery service and Uber Eats and DoorDash companies did very well because they were used more than ever. But in terms of the domain name side, there, registration slowed down a little bit for the short term because it was just uncertain. And then you saw a resurgence, obviously, in domain name registrations in certain themes
Hmm.
around COVID, around work at home, around telemedicine, around things that were related to what was going on at the time. So the one thing about the domain industry is that it trends really fast. Matter of fact, you see trends in the domain name industry than you can faster than you can in most any other industry, because people start thinking about ideas and what they're going to do and start watching things in the news, and they start registering domain names because of it. So the domain registration side actually stayed pretty strong. It was the aftermarket sales side that slowed down a bit because of the fear factor of what you need to do with your money, and if you lost your job, how you're going to pay for insurance and rent and food on your plate. So that's the only side of it that kind of slowed down, although that's an important side. But as I mentioned before, people started thinking about how they're going to do work at home and create new business ideas. And, you get to see how much stuff goes on while you're sitting at home and locked up. And the effect of that is domain name transactions and sales and online businesses launching.
Yeah, I would think that people have more time on their hands, especially if they're out of work. They're gonna look at starting things. Now, since this show deals mostly with the adult industry, I'm curious as to your take on adult domains. Now, you've been involved with adult forever. At one time, adult domains seemed really easy to sell. These days, my experience anyway, not so much. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as you know, the adult industry has gone through a major transition. Back in the day when I was actively supporting many of the adult companies from a domain standpoint and keeping domain names safe, and then doing a lot of transactions and bringing the auctions to the adult industry. The industry was thriving. The affiliate networks were making, were doing great for the main players. Then there was a consolidation, and of course, free porn, which kind of changed how payments were being made for content. And what used to be hundreds of or even thousands of small and medium-sized adult companies and shops and content builders and sites and affiliates. Now we're probably looking at what, five or six conglomerate companies that own everything else, and the
Hmm.
affiliate networks aren't as strong as they were before.
Right.
So, like with every business, it's gone through a consolidation, it's gone through a transformation and change, and because it's gone from pay to free in some parts, except for the niche markets. It's a lot harder to sell a six, seven figure name. And the rate, the return on that investment takes a lot longer and isn't always guaranteed. So, that's kind of what I'm seeing in any case. Um, and you also see some of the major adult players going mainstream. Perfect example is MindGeek and others, and a lot of my old clients and customers are well into the mainstream space,
Hmm.
along with having adult holdings. So they diversified it a lot. And some of my bigger clients, in the adult industry, have bought some of the bigger names in the mainstream side.
How have you seen the domain market overall, the domain market landscape change in your years in the business?
When I started in the business in 1994, 1995, there was basically .com, .net, and .org. There was .edu and .mil, but there wasn't any other extensions, and .edu was restricted to, official universities and schools, and then .mil was for the military. Um, since then, back in the early 2000s, you saw new extensions being added. Of course, there was info and .biz, and there was the rebranding of a lot of country codes like .ws for website and .cc for carbon copy and TV for television. And they took country code extensions and started to rebrand those during that period of time as well. As you know, in the last 5 to 7 years, there has been a resurgence or a new play on the domain names for new extensions and all kinds of different extensions. So now there's 1,000 more extensions out in the marketplace. Let's call it 300 of which are commercial generic use. 300 are brand associated domain names for brands and corporations, and the other 300 are for information or nonprofits or restricted TLDs that are for banking, insurance, and other uses. It reminds me back in the old days, and a lot of domain people will relate to this because a lot of the most famous domainers like Rick Schwartz and Michael Perkins and so on, and a lot of the old guys used to have their business in the vanity 800 and 900 space. So of course, 800 buy cars or 800 doctors, and you got that spelling so that people didn't have to remember what the numbers were. And when those numbers ran out, when those combinations ran out, they went from 800 to 888, and then 877, and 866, 855, 844. Now there's 20 some odd toll-free numbers. That's a very similar simulation to what happens or what's happening in the domain world. When the most valuable domain combinations, letters and numbers and words, started running out, ICANN, felt it was time to add new extensions to give more people fair right and availability to get a domain name in the in the keyword that they wanted. So they opened up the strings to other registries that could provide that. And so now we see kind of an influx of supply with demand, still in the same situation. So there's a lot more supply than there is demand. And so that has a direct effect on values. But there's the old school folks that feel that .com is king and always will be, like the 800 number. But to be honest, I was against it in the beginning, and now, having helped some of these new TLDs launch, like .club and .global, and working with some of the big conglomerates in the space, it's a natural transition. It makes sense. And if you ask your kids, they don't know what .com really is, what it means. It doesn't matter to them, just like 800 numbers don't, because they have cell phones with free calling. So, if a name with a proper match extension that's to the right of the dot and the left of the dot word is a good keyword and they can't get it in a .com, they go to the next extension that makes more linguistic sense to them. Like instead of buycars.com, which of course has been taken since the mid 90s, now they can get buy.cars or buy.autos, and they shorten the string and it makes more linguistic and intuitive sense in some cases. So, I do believe there's a space for it and a place for them, and some will be very successful and some won't.
Okay,
so that's how I've seen it change quite a bit.
Okay, let's dig a little deeper into that though, and it's something I get asked about a lot. Yeah, .com is king. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that. Certainly you won't, because that's where you've made your money. But there's so many extensions now. .xyz, in our industry, .xxx and .sex, which both make sense. But what are things like .xyz, for instance, are they worth much?
So .xyz, it was meant to be an alternative to .com, something very generic that anything to the left of the dot could go with.
Right.
So that's what .com is. It doesn't have to make sense to the right of the dot because it's a generic extension that doesn't mean anything at the end. Mm-hmm. What gave .xyz, a big plus and big benefit was that the biggest search company in the space, decided to rebrand themselves as a .xyz website, which was Alphabet. Which is Google. And when you see something like that happens, obviously it becomes prominent and people catch the wave a little bit. So I know the founder of .xyz, and it's Daniel Nagari, and he's been a longtime client and friend of mine. And he owns a couple, several of the other new strings like I believe he owns .beauty and .autos, and he's acquired some other strings in the space. And the belief of the new extensions, and I'm on board on this for the most part, is that it gives people choice and options that make sense. So there's going to be probably a .web coming out soon, which is going to be a direct competitor to the .com, and web does have a meaning. So if anything that's going to compete with the .com, it's probably going to be a .web. There's other versions of stuff like that, like .online, .website, or .site. I'm sorry, because .ws kind of meant website in the beginning, but .site is another extension that's being used for that. So I do believe that .com is king, just like an 800 number is king for toll-free numbers, but it mean that other domain names can't be very successful in the space for their particular extensions. The big difference is, obviously, back in the day where the traffic was driven by .com because it was the only commercial domain extension, so it was typed into the URL line constantly. And so you don't get the benefit of the constant type-in traffic on some of the new extensions, but website building has changed, that, and you can definitely have very successful sites with the new extension. And if you're building a website and you're making a presence out of it, and you do enough branding to let people know you're not a .com but you're a .club, for example, you can be very successful at it. And I mentioned .club because club is one of those domain names and extensions that the founders, who are also friends of mine and I helped launch, helped pick their premium name list and everything. They're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They stayed very focused on that extension. They did a lot of research before launching it. There's literally tens of millions of clubs all over the world, such as chess clubs and golf clubs and bait clubs and swimming clubs, and you name every school, they have tons of clubs. And then there's VIP clubs and dance clubs and all these things. So the one unique thing about .club is that the word club in .club is spelled in English almost in every country in the world, no matter what the language is, including China. So they don't have a word for club, and they use the English word club and they put Chinese characters in front of it. So if you go to Shanghai or you go to Beijing or even Hong Kong, you'll see the Chinese character string and then the word club at the end in English. So that's a pretty good litmus test on how strong the word club is. And lots of things make sense, linguistic sense, to the left and to the right of the dot on that.
Okay.
And so, as long as something makes linguistic sense, I think, and of course that the registry is a supportive registry, and they're going to be supportive to the string and advertise and make sure they're going to be around for a while. It's going to have a good chance of surviving.
But do domains other than .coms have a lot of value on the market for an investor, for instance?
Yeah, sure. So .club is actually doing a lot of transactions in the aftermarket, and I'm sure some people have heard on the show about the new craze that's going on at Clubhouse, which is the new social app. And just by mistake and default and kudos to .club, that everybody in Clubhouse has their own club on Clubhouse, and they're buying domain names to represent their club. So now they're doing resales inside Clubhouse for .club domain names and reselling them in kind of like virtual auction, not virtual, but Clubhouse auctions, and selling domain names inside the Clubhouse. So it's pretty cool that they're doing that. But I sold a couple six-figure .club names, including coffee.club and also wine.club at auction. And besides .club, there's then several transactions and other extensions that have sold. Now, is it as prevalent as .com? No, but it's also, they're not 25 years old like .com is either. So I don't think we're in the first inning of a ball game when it comes to the domain name industry. There's a long game to play, and there's a lot of, if you look at the whole entire world population, less than half of the world is online. When you look at areas like Africa and Asia, like Africa is only 17% online. There's parts of Asia that are about the same. Not even China is, fully online. The United States is 75% online, not even 90 or 100%. So there's still tons of room for growth. And as the population expands, there's going to be more need for domain name and online presence. So to answer your question, there's a lot of extensions that carry some value. And there's been transactions that have happened that have been pretty significant in a lot of the other extensions, um, in several of the big extensions. So that's good news that there are some good domain names in those extensions, and you can have an aftermarket for those over time.
Now, since again we're talking about adult, what do you think about domains like .xxx and .sex?
I mean, they definitely have a place in the adult industry for sure. The adult industry is in, again, the adult industry itself, in my opinion, isn't growing at the rate and the speed or at all compared to what it was 10, 15 years ago. So if you throw one of those extensions on back then, it probably would have taken off a lot faster. But things go in waves, and things become popular in different waves. And I think it's a safe bet to have yourself at least covered in your brand in some of these adult extensions, and you could launch new websites and build new assets on some of those extensions and drive a lot of traffic to it. You're not going to get the natural type in traffic yet, but you can drive a lot of traffic to it through keyword buying and create a brand, and then people start to recognize that it's not a .com, it's a .xxx, and rightfully so, because it's in the adult industry and it has meaning in that industry. Okay. So handful of those extensions in that industry are gonna be fine, and it's perfectly suited for that.
Now, you do domain appraisals. I know because we work together on them. Yep. Without giving away your secret sauce, what exactly makes a domain valuable and what doesn't?
So I get this question a lot, like how can you evaluate a piece of digital real estate and virtual real estate, and say that it has some kind of accuracy. So back in 1998, 1999, when we sold the first $1 million domain name, which was wallstreet.com, of course, everybody flocked to us like, what's my name worth? What's my name worth? What's my name worth? So what we did is we looked at how is physical real estate evaluated? What are some of the characteristics that can cross over to the virtual real estate world? So, for example, if you have a piece of premium real estate downtown in New York City, your most valuable real estate is what? Madison Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that so valuable? It's valuable because it gets lots of traffic, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of car traffic, a lot of taxi traffic. And the most valuable and most highest rent are in those areas because people are more likely to go into those stores and shop because there's so much traffic. Where there's hardly any traffic, like out in the middle of the boondocks, you don't get a lot of traffic. You have to evaluate your property based off of something else, like maybe how much property you have. So traffic directly ties into type in traffic. So car traffic and foot traffic in a city or in a location types in to go, correlates almost directly to how many times that domain name is typed into the URL line. So that's one factor. Another factor, obviously, is comparable sales. So if I sold autos.com, which I did in 1999 for $2 million, other keywords with the same word, obviously, you can use that as a reference point to say, okay, well, autos.com sold for $2.2 million. So what's auto worth? Well, it's probably something similar, except it's singular and probably not as valuable, but you can use some percentage of that value. Then you have car and cars, and you have automobile and vehicles, and and trucking and trucks, and so you can play off of those to get to some kind of accuracy based off the number of names that sold in those keywords. Similar to having the same house that you have in your neighborhood, and your neighbor has the same builder with the same structure, and it just sold for $900,000, and it's a 3.2 or a 4.2, and yours is probably going to be in the same price range because of that. So that's the comparable sales, reference. And then you have location, which we kind of discussed based off of traffic, but beachfront property that's undeveloped is desirable because you're looking at the water every day and the sun coming up or the sun going down, and you're looking at a place where people like to go and relax, and it's more expensive because you're on the beach, and it's limited supply because unlike the inside of the United States, there's only so much beach property. So then there's scarcity value and how rare it is and how desirable it is, and same with downtown property. The same thing, beach versus downtown versus rural, Rural would relate to multiple words, for example. So two words together, you're getting outside your city a little bit, and that's why you start expanding outwards. So instead of cars, you're going to have buy cars or sell cars or cheap cars or whatever. Memorable, how memorable it is. Is it a dictionary term? Is it a keyword? Does it get natural typing traffic? How much? Is there other comparable sales? Is it something that is easy to recognize? Is it easy to spell? The shorter, the better. If it's a long word like entrepreneur, a lot of people don't know how to spell that word, even though it's a very, very valuable word. So how many times is it going to be mistyped? So without going into all 21 factors that we look at when we do an evaluation, those are some of the most important things. And now the comparable database, unlike in 1999, when I had probably some of the only sales in the industry, now we have tons of sales under our belt and under the industry's belt. So now, right now, my database is over 1 million domain sales, in terms of what I can look up. And then there's public sales; those are like private transactions. Then there's public sales, which is another million sales. And so now you can match up keywords and values and sale prices based off of time, and then look at, getting down to good appraisal because of that.
That's awesome. Now,
and then, of course, you have industry too, which I didn't mention, but there's the tech industry, and there's different types of industries that are either hot or cold at this certain time too, and what those domain names fall in. So, right now we're in an online learning, school, online schooling, online education, meeting at home, work from home, telemedicine, things that are remote and accessible from anywhere, virtual. Those are the hot things right now versus, physical doctor visits and, going into an office, those types of things. So.
Okay, now time for your shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about Right of the Dot. Tell me more about what you do there.
So most people recognize me and remember me as moniker.com because I got a crazy idea and said, you know what? I really love the adult industry because they're loyal and they face the most adversity and the most scrutiny and have the biggest regulation of all. And if you can get those people on your side and earn their business, you're doing a pretty good job. And so very early in my career, I made it a point to go after the adult industry and serve that community for domain protection because we were the only registrar that never lost a name from domain theft. And I invented Who is Privacy so I could protect people's privacy and keep their domain names and their assets confidential and secret. And that was very important at the time for many of the adult players. I credit the adult industry for, probably the first online SSL certificates and merchant transactions using credit cards and having membership services. And, those things are really important. And there probably wouldn't be a lot of businesses alive today without the adult industry paving the way for those people. So I felt that was important. So I showed up at Phoenix forums and AVN shows and all the adult industry shows. And it took me a while to break in. And then once I did and got people to trust us with their assets and moved people over from random registrars that people didn't really know really what they did on the back end, it was a very important thing for me. So I felt that that was important. So I just want to give some background on why I focused on the adult industry. And then, when I started Moniker was not just a registrar, it was a domain asset protection and monetization company. So, our sole purpose was to help people acquire and register names that were important for their business. And then if they wanted to park them and monetize that traffic, we did that. If they wanted to sell their domain names, we did that. And if they wanted to buy domain names in stealth, we did that too. And so we created the first brokerage room with salespeople to go out and do all those things. And we were probably one of the first feeds for, traffic monetization. This is right around when Google wasn't even in existence, and worked with several players in doing that. And I built Moniker to a nice business and sold it off to a company called Oversee.net. And then I ran Snap Names, which was the company that kind of invented the drop catching service for domain names. And we had the largest parking platform at the time called Domain Sponsor. And so I ran both of those divisions and also Moniker all at the same time. And then when my contract was up, I decided it was not time to be corporate anymore and go back into the entrepreneurial spirit. So I started right at the dot. And at that time, the new TLDs were starting to be talked about. And I felt I could take that knowledge that I learned in all my years and help some of the new extensions launch and be, vibrant. And so if you look at the domain right of the dot, it means, what's important is to the right of the dot just as much as the left of the dot in this case. So the extension is important as well. And so I kept on doing the premium domain auctions for all the big conferences, and still did brokerage and stealth acquisitions for corporate clients, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And we hold the industry's biggest and largest domain auction in the industry, and I feel that it's important to do that because it keeps the market fluid, liquid, vibrant, alive. It helps with everybody's sell value, regardless whether you have .com, net, org, health, sex, triple X, or whatever. If any name sells in any extension, it's good for the entire industry, and it raises the tide water for everybody.
Absolutely. Now, what is the biggest challenge you see facing the overall internet space today?
Every couple of years, people question whether domain names are going to be relevant because of, back in the day, years ago, there was a company called Real Names, and they thought that it was okay not to even have a domain name and you can navigate through the web, and that didn't work. And then, we moved up to apps, and why do you need a domain name if you have an app or if you're using app? Well, ultimately, the app has its own domain name and website in order to download the app, or you go to the app store, which resides on a domain name. So that didn't work either. I don't think there's anything that's going to disrupt the domain name itself, the importance of the domain name. I think ICANN, it's a very bureaucratic and political organization, and there's a lot of policy, around what you can and can't do with a domain name. And, just to make it clear, no one really truly owns their domain name. You have the right to register it and renew it. But you don't hold true title like you do your piece of property when you pay it off and you own it from the mortgage company.
Right.
The domain name is a subscription. And if you paid $10 million for it and you forget to renew it, you lose it. So that's the important thing to remember, that you have the right, you're buying the rights to hold that domain name and pay your $10 renewal fee every year. But if you forget it and you fuck up, you're going to lose your domain name no matter how much money you paid. So there's still people that think that every domain name that's not developed that someone owns is a squatter, and they don't have a right to have it unless it's a website. And I've been a proponent of people's rights to use their domain names any way they want, as long as they're not breaking the law or violating somebody else's, trademark. And it's no different than you buying a piece of land in the middle of downtown and deciding you don't want to build on it. There's no law that says you have to. You can keep it a blank piece of land. You can offer it for resale at any time you want. You can throw a billboard on top of it. That's what parking is, and that's how you can earn money from paying for, getting advertising paid for, or throwing billboards and banners across your building. And that's I'm a big believer that you can do whatever you want with your domain name. And now there's all this these new domain names being registered, and they're vacant pieces of land until somebody develops them. And that part of the business is growing. So I don't see pressures on the internet that way. As more and more extensions come into existence, it can get into a situation where things get confusing a little bit, and there will be more extensions coming soon. So even though everybody thought that these 1,000 wouldn't survive, there's going to be another 500 to 1,000 coming in a couple years. And so there's going to be a new wave of them coming. So the biggest threat is how you brand your business going forward, and making sure people know what your extension is, and that you have online presence and have the right domain name that matches your products and services. Linguistic flow of your domain name is very important, and especially in the new extension. So the word to the left of the dot has to make sense to the right of the dot, or it doesn't make sense. Right. So that's really important.
So let's say I want to be a domain investor in 2021. What advice would you have for me?
If you thought that you can't get good domain names in 2021, that's just not true. You can enter into the aftermarket and, go to places like my auction, and you can get the most premium domain names that you want. You might have to be well funded, in some cases to get, domain names like restaurants.com and sorority.com and cats.com, which is what we're selling, and a bunch of others, because they're, big names. But there's plenty of names that are at a fraction of those costs or at no reserve that are selling. And not only on my site, but or in my auction, but at Afternic and GoDaddy auctions and GoDaddy drop catching and Snap names. And, there's still domain names that are registered and dropping every day that you can get, at decent costs. And then, of course, there's a whole slew of new registrations for new TLDs that haven't been registered yet. So, again, we're talking about waves of the future, and, buying domain names today that can, in 10 to 15, 20 years, could be extremely valuable, even if you got it at registration fees, or if you paid a premium for a .com name today. It's surely to go up in value over time, because that's considered, the beachfront and the downtown city real estate.
Okay.
And it's available. It's available.
Okay, so next week, and I've got my getting my dates straight here. Next week, you're going to be doing an auction.
Which is tomorrow on your podcast.
No, actually, this is going to drop on the 17th. So actually, it is next week. I'm getting my dates. I'm getting my dates straight now. You're going to be doing an auction. Tell me a bit about the event.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing something. I mean, everybody knows and recognizes I brought in live auctions into various industries, including the adult industry. So I usually bring a live auctioneer in, and we do a live auction of about 100 to 150 premium domain names. And people gather in the room and they raise their paddles and they get these names. And of course, I target the type of names that I'm selling based around the theme of the show or the conference. And so for the adult industry, obviously I've sold many big adult names, for example. And, when I was at the affiliate summit, I sold affiliate type domain names, and search engine strategy, the same thing. And the domain industry shows the same thing. So this auction is going to be a live virtual auction. I'm actually going to fly to College Station, Texas, which is where my championship auctioneer is. He's a world champion auctioneer. His name's Wayne Wheat. We've been working together now for 9 years. We've literally sold hundreds of $1 million of domains together. And we're going to go to a production studio, a live, like TV studio, and we're going to broadcast this out to thousands of people on various networks through a webcast. And so I'm taking submissions right now and going through tens of thousands of submissions, and I'm whittling that down to what will probably be about 500 domain names that will be in the auction. And of the 500, there'll be 100 selected for the live portion, which will happen one day, which will be February the 25th at 12 noon Central Standard Time. And we're going to webcast those sales right there on the spot, as if you're sitting in the room with your paddle, except you're going to be betting online and bidding online with your computer. And because we're going to be in this production studio, we're able to do some really cool things like special effects and, throw fireworks out in the background when a name sales, and, be more interactive and fun. So that's what I'm really excited about. And then the other 400 names will remain in the online auction part, which will end March the 4th. So the live portion is going to go live and be, I'm going to be selling names live, just like I'm in an auction room, just like Sotheby's or Christie's or Make-em Car auctions. I'm going to be selling those with Wayne on in a television studio, broadcast it out to the web on our stream, and selling 100 names there. And then the other 400 names will remain on the online auction piece until March 4th. So it's going to be really exciting, and we're going to be able to send the snippet of the HTML code or the video code out to everybody, including yourself. You can broadcast the auction on your site.
Sweet.
And you can bring your audience in and watch the auction live. If you don't want to send people off to the actual auction site, we'll allow you to have the auction running on your site. And when somebody wants to come and bid, they'll just pop over and hit the bidding link and get signed up and register, and then be ready to bid on the domain name. But you can draw people on your own blog or studio or website. We're going to do that too, and send that out to everybody in the domain industry and anybody that's interested in having the feed. And that way you can keep your crowd and have discussions going on your own site, and not have to go off send your customer somewhere else. So it's going to be really cool and fun. And that's how I think I'm going to draw a lot of attention worldwide. So we're getting ready to do a big international press release that'll be translated into multiple languages, highlighting some of the big names we have for sale. And I think it's going to be a new way to disrupt the way things are being done now in an online, type of scenario where nobody can gather in a room together, really, and raise the paddles. We're going to have them raising the paddles online in a way they've never done before.
Keep in mind, this is the adult space, so they may be raising the paddles another way as well.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I do have some names that cross over the adult space that's on here, and looks like we're going to get a couple more. I won't have anything as crude as I used to have in my auctions on the adult shows, but they're, we're probably going to have names like Cox.com, spelled the right way, COCKS.com. We have online babes or babesonly.com. I have sexo.com, which is a Spanish word for sex. It's going to be that's an awesome name.
Oh, that's Rick. That's Rick's.
No, not sexo. He has another name.
Yeah.
He has another name, but we have a name like that. And there's cockfight.com. There's, there's a lot of names that could be used for, in the adult industry in both, things like celebrity photos, which isn't really adult, but we all know that the adult industry is monetized celebrity photo videos and celebrity type names as well.
Interesting. Okay, so I see another project you're involved in. What aren't you involved in? You got real estate in Costa Rica. You got a weed business. But I see one other project that looks interesting, and it's desktop.com. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm not really involved in it. I'm an investor, but it's really cool. My a colleague and friend and a client of mine, his name is Rolf Larson, and he created the .global extension, as a matter of fact, and he came up with this idea on how to consolidate the apps that are all on your computer and make it really easy to operate and make it virtual and versatile, so you can use them better. And it's really taken off. It's really incredible. So some of the biggest domain guys are invested in the business as well, and pretty excited about where that's going to go. So I'm an investor. I'm not a part of the company other than being an investor in that business. But you mentioned Costa Rica. I'm a part owner in an awesome adventure park there called Monte Eco Adventure Park. It's in Guanacaste, and we are fortunate to have the longest, fastest, highest zip line in all the Americas. You basically lay down like Superman, and it's 1,000 feet high, and you zip line into the ocean on your belly, and you fly, basically through over, from a mountain down to the ocean. It's really cool. And we have lots of exotic animals in our animal sanctuary that are all rescue animals. And it's a really cool place. And we have a luxury rental villa on the property as well there. And Costa Rica is probably going to be one of the best places to go after all this shit's over. They've done a really good job controlling the pandemic. They've closed their borders early on. It really affected their tourism dollars, obviously. But they've really worked hard to make sure that they have their shit together when things open up. And I flew in December, and I was just blown away how clean and how nice it is there, even with this all going on. They really have their stuff together. There's washing stations outside of every restaurant and bar and retail store. So, you're not allowed to walk in unless you wash your hands, and, you have to wear your mask and all that stuff. And because of that, the area that I'm in, which is Guanacaste, and in particular in this area called Coco, Playa del Coco and Montepalo, there's no cases of COVID, so or hardly no cases, So it's they've done a really good job. So pretty excited about how Costa Rica's handled things and how they're going to bounce back.
It sounds like you're describing Thailand, my friend. We just had a very small second wave, and I think Thailand's rated number 1 in the world as far as COVID response. So it's good to be good. It's good to be here, and I know you got a place there. So
I have a place in Costa Rica, and then and I'm a main investor with Evan Horowitz, which many in the adult industry know. With weedclub.com. And we're real excited about that, especially given the fact that we're probably going to look at a defederalized cannabis industry at some point. And a big ease up on what how things are being treated with cannabis, and that's also moving into Costa Rica as well. So pretty excited about how the weed club business is going to work.
One can only hope, from your mouth to God's ears. Well, I want to remind everybody that the auction is next week, the 25th. That would be next Thursday.
And bidding is open now, by the way. So
Okay.
when you hear the show, you can go online and bid. If you just go to rotd.com, the link to bid is right there on the front page and also on the submission page. And then it brings you to the live auction, and you can start placing bids. And the live portion will go live on February 25th at 12 noon Central Standard Time. And the extended auction will run through March 4th.
I'm headed there now. Well, Monte, I'd like to thank you for being our guest today on Adult Site Broker Talk, and I hope we'll get a chance to do this again really soon. My broker tip today is part 2 of how to buy a website. Last week, we discussed first deciding the type of site you want to buy and then establishing what your budget is. Next, it's time to look for your new website. So where do you look? Well, Adult Site Broker is a great place to start. We always have a nice variety of website and non-website properties for sale, but if there's a particular type of site you want, we can also act as your buyer's broker to help you find just the right site. Other places to look are boards like xbiz.net and gfy.com, but to be completely honest, unless what you're looking for is a really low-end property, you're probably not going to find what you're looking for there. Of course, you could contact site owners yourself, but take it from someone who does it for a living. It's a major hassle, and it can be really hard to even find out who owns a site. Almost all sites use what is called as Whois privacy from the domain registrar. So when you send them an email, it will be an anonymous address, and in most cases, the emails aren't returned. We have a huge database of sellers and generally know who owns what. And if it's a website of note, if we don't know who owns it, we can always find out. We'll talk about this subject more next week. And next week, we'll be talking to Carl Edwards of You Love Jack. And that's it for this week's Adult Site Broker Talk. I'd once again like to thank my guest, Monte Cahn. Talk to you again next week on Adult Site Broker Talk.